Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail. And before I introduce my guest to the day, I want to let you know that I want to give a lot of credit to my husband for helping me on all of the snowy Saturday mornings where he had to plow the driveway for me so that I could get here on time. And so I really appreciate him for that, and I wanted to let everybody in the viewing audience know. Now, my guest today is Brian Abram. He is the Republican Commissioner from the Chautauqua County Board of Elections. And he's here today so that we can talk about the election process. Thank you for coming on today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, first, I want to ask how did you become commissioner at the Board of Elections, and do you have to have a certain kind of education to be that?
Well, I came to being the election commissioner through a long process. When I was like 28 years old, I was recruited to be a town board member for Stockton. Something I never really had ambition to. It just was one of these things that somebody asked and I didn't say no, and I ran for office and I won. I served 6 years on the Stockton Town Board, and I got another phone call saying you'd make a great county legislator. And I again said, I think that would be something I would like to do, and I ran for county legislature and I served for 6 terms. And as a county legislator, you get to be aware of a lot of different issues and situations, obviously through the county, through the election process. So I drew interest in the election process from the legislative position. And then once there was a vacancy, a retirement from the past Republican commissioner, I threw my name in the hat, and there's a process where you have to run for the office. I run for it every 4 years, and I was fortunate enough to be elected by the Republican committee. It just looked like the thing that I felt called to at the time, and I've been doing it for over 13 years, and I'm very happy with how I got there. Do you have to have credentials or an education? No, my degree's in business administration. So I was in the world of basically making sure that things were bought and purchased. I was in merchandising. I was in some other things prior to coming on as the board. But I had a mentor, a gentleman who'd been there some time with Norm Green, and the two of us melded together to do the board and make it happen. And I basically learned all of it on the job training through him and with the staff that we had and have. So it's been a process where there is no true path for people, I don't believe. I mean, I think everybody has their own little version of like mine. But it was politics, people, and the opportunity to provide voting services that drew me to it.
Yeah, I was looking, the first year that I worked as an election day worker, I was looking for a little bit of part-time work to do, and I wound up seeing all of these notices on public bulletin boards and looking for election inspectors, and I thought to myself, well, I think I'll look into seeing if I can do that. And well, I called up to the Board of Elections and just got a voicemail and left a message. And in the meantime, somebody had apparently looked me up or something over there. It was one of the instructors that I got the phone call back from. Her name is Ruth.
Ruth Ekstrom.
Yes, and she called me and she said, well, you're registered as not wanting to be affiliated with any particular party. So if you want to be an election day inspector, you will have to re-register as either a Democrat or a Republican. And then she said I would have to check with you and Norm and to see if it was okay with you to if I did it on such short notice like that, which I did. And I never heard back from anybody that it wasn't okay that I worked. And then I got an assignment. I took the training, And then in the fall, I got the assignment, to work for the first time, and that was the 2016 election was my first year. This coming fall will be my 7th.
Well, congratulations and thank you.
Oh.
A big part of what we do is people like yourselves that step up and say, look at, I can do this, I'd like to do this. We need upwards of over 400 people every election. And you and all the other individuals are really the backbone of what we provide, which is voting services. You did mention that New York State does require that the two major parties run the boards of elections. The two major parties are determined by the highest vote totals of the gubernatorial election. Whoever comes in first and second will run the boards of elections. Well, for the last, I'm not sure how long, probably from the start of time, the Republicans and the Democrats have shared the top spots over the past 100 years or more. And so as a representative of the Democratic Party, you're there to balance and basically make sure that your party representation is there, and the Republican counterpart will sit next to you, and they oversee the process from our office to the poll sites to the entire election day experience. It's all bipartisan individuals working side by side to provide the service. So, again, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Once I'd done it the first time, then I was hooked on it. I don't see myself not doing it. So, okay, we'll go on to the next. Now, we work in bipartisan teams at the elections, and you do at the Board of Elections office. Do you want to explain that
Sure.
to the viewing audience?
The system is set up to have checks and balances. The two major parties are in a, now it sounds negative, but it really isn't, is there to keep an eye on each other. They're there to make sure the integrity of the process is followed. And the idea of having two individuals overlooking each other in every aspect of the job is a way of saying, we are double checking. When you go to register to vote, any individual goes to register to vote, it will go through a Republican's hands, and then it will be double checked by a Democrat to make sure every bit of information on that form is 100% accurate according to what the individual requested. It's a double check process just to make sure that there isn't anything that isn't completely using proper integrity through that process. So as long as we have both parties equally represented in all aspects of what we do, you are technically getting a checks and balance process throughout. Myself and my current commissioner, Luz Torres, we each have the equal amount of employees. And we pair those employees up with each other. When they go across the street to get the mail, two people go.
Oh,
A
yeah.
Republican and a Democrat.
I had, Norm Green had told me that
Yes.
one time. Yes.
It's a process that everything we do, you are locked to your counterpart or your coworker who is your counterpart. So you'll see us in pairs. We do not go anywhere. We do not do anything unless you have a Republican and a Democrat to make sure, again, it sounds like it's like, very much strict, but it is not strict. It is just the way the system is created. When they go over to the other building to go into the machine room or go into print ballots or go to do whatever, it's two individuals. So the entire time, the chain of custody of the entire process is done with individuals that are appointed. I appoint my staff, Luz Torres appoints her staff, we put them together and say, let's get the job done. Same thing at the poll site that you mentioned. You will be sitting next to a Republican all day signing in individuals. It's because the two of you are working as a team to provide the services, but you're there as a balance of the two major parties so you can watch the process and make sure there's nothing funny going on or nothing that you would say is inappropriate going on, because you're representing your party, your side of the aisle, and your responsibility is to make sure that that is correct. So it is inefficient as far as a business model, but effective as far as a voting methods and integrity style of doing business.
Okay, thank you. Now, what can people do if they want to become an election day worker?
Well, if they want to become an election day worker, they can reach out to us in multiple ways. They can call us on the phone at area code 716-753-4580. And anybody will be glad to sign you up and get you on our newsletter, get some information from you, get you prepared. Because what we will do is reach out to you with training dates, get you welcome to the club, get you all the things necessary so you're an efficient and effective employee. We have a very good training process. We pay you to be trained, and we pay you to work for us. We try to assign you as close as possible to your home base so you can be part of your community if that's something that you'd like. We have split shifts. We try to do whatever we can to entice people to become part of it. We also have a website called votechautauqua.com, and it actually has a click saying becoming a poll worker. You could go there and reintroduce yourself to us, and we'll again reach out to you and become part of the process to get you where you need to be a poll worker. So you could stop by the Board of Elections in Mayville and just say, hey, I'd like to sign up, I'd like to be considered. We certainly will take your information and get you involved with us and do everything we can to make you comfortable and have you be someone like yourself who seems to be ready to come back year after year and be part of it and watch democracy and be part of democracy and work through the process and understand exactly how we do things here in New York State. So there's multiple ways, like I said, a phone call, an email through votechautauqua.com, or a personal visit. We'll do outreach on your registration form. It'll say, do you want to be a poll site worker? You check off that box. That's another option for us to reach out to you and get the process started.
Okay. There was something that some of us did. Earlier in the winter, we appeared on Spectrum News. I was one of them, and Luz was one, and then there was another lady.
A brand new recruit that is coming on board, yes.
Yeah, Spectrum News wanted to interview somebody who'd already been doing it for a while and somebody else that was new, and then they interviewed Luz. So
Spectrum News, that was a statewide presentation.
Was it really?
Yes.
Everybody in the state saw that?
That's what they told me they were going to do. So. And I know it was shared throughout on the Republican, there's a website for all Republican commissioners, and that link was there for everybody to view. So all of the commissioners throughout New York State, I do know, had an opportunity to see that presentation. The reason Spectrum News did it, and the reason that it was stemming off, the state board has created a poll worker recruitment day or month. We're trying to tie that in because there's a shortage. There's a huge shortage of individuals willing to come on board, step up, and be part of this process. And their goal, Spectrum's goal, was by doing this would be to make their awareness to individuals stating that, hey, if this is something you're interested in doing, they need you. Please consider becoming a poll worker. And then your piece was the veteran version of, hey, I stepped up, I like it, this is something that I feel good doing. And then, of course, on the other end was the individual who was brand new, who's just saying, you know, I am going to go for this. But due to the shortage, Spectrum News wanted to use Chautauqua County as like a spot to enhance the knowledge of individuals' chances of coming back to their local boards. And in this situation is a shortage, and we desperately need more people. So Chautauqua County's always been blessed for all the years I've been there of having enough, but I got to tell you right now we're probably at the edge where we need more, and we've joined the rest of the state, which has been in the shortage mode of not having enough qualified workers. And so the concern is there. It's democracy. There is no delay. You are open at a certain time. You will be voting at a certain time. Now the challenge is finding enough individuals to make sure that can happen.
Okay. Now, let's see. Let's talk about the importance of, I meant to bring it, the voter cards that we get in the mail every year.
Right.
I meant to bring it. I meant to bring the booklet that we get the training from, but with the weather the way it was this morning, I got kind of sidetracked and didn't bring them. But we want to talk about the importance of these voter cards. They have important uses. For one thing, there's like it'll tell you on the front of the card whether or not your party, the party that you're registered as, has a primary or not, because I noticed the one time I actually worked at a primary, it was a Democratic primary, but a lot of Republicans came in. And apparently they weren't supposed to be voting. I mean, some of them didn't like it, but you know, even the Republicans that were working at the poll site that day couldn't vote either, you know. But I remember somebody getting really angry with us, and that's part of the information. People should read those cards because that's part of the information on it. And then the other thing is there's a barcode that can be scanned and makes getting the person signed in more quicker. You want to talk about
Sure.
that?
The card is called a mail check card, and what happens is every year, once a year in April, we send that to every one of our voters. On that little document, if you will, the little card, like you mentioned, is some very important information. It will clearly state who you are. It will clearly state where your poll site is. It will tell you if you have a primary or not. It has got the barcode on it. So if you do bring it to the poll site and you want to use that as a way to speed up the process of getting you through, you can scan it in, and I'm sure you've scanned some individuals in.
Lots of them.
Yes, it's become more and more popular, and that little card now can be used like a little tool to get you through the process that much quicker. That card is mandatory by law. We have to reach out to everybody that is a registered voter once a year and see if they're still actually there at their facility or their residence that they said they were. Now, roughly 80,000 of them go out. A large group come back because people are very mobile these days. People move a lot, and they are not where they said they were. So that card will come back. We'll make them inactive in certain situations, and they will have to then prove that they actually live there, because this is the way of keeping our records accurate and up to date, and making sure that people's information is, to the best of our ability, up to date. So we send them all out. Some of them come back. It corrects our database. It updates our database. But it gives you a lot of information. And that information on that little yellow card should be something, as a voter, you want to look at and confirm where your poll site is, confirm what party you belong to, and basically use that as a tool to get through the process if you so choose.
Yeah, which brings up another point about people moving. Like, we had a problem with a lady this past November, had moved. From my point of view, I think probably people should notify the Board of Elections shortly after they move, because they're going to have a problem when they get to the poll site, because, she came to our regular poll site, but we have 4 districts in our poll site, and she knew that the place she'd moved to was a different table that she should go to. She knew that much, but we could not find her address. We could not find her address in the system. It just happened that Momina and her assistant were there at the time, and they were trying to figure it out. And what we wound up figuring out we were going to have to do was send her back to her original table to fill out and get an affidavit valid, because there's paperwork that we have to fill out.
Correct.
There, if somebody changes their address. And but then she left before we could get around to this, because she had an appointment she had to be to somewhere. So anyway, she said she'd come back, except I don't think she did. She must have gotten held up somewhere. So I think she wound up missing out on voting. So I just wanted you to say something about why it is important to notify the Board of Elections when you move, so that they don't run into these problems.
It is a huge benefit for us if you contact us and say that you've moved. We take moves daily, as you can imagine, and the efficient way for us to track you and put you in the proper spot is to move you where you currently live and then send you a card verifying it and saying, listen, you told us this is what the information, this is your new information, please review it. The good news is there's more than one method for that. If you go to the DMV and you change your address, they'll share it with us.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Oh.
So there's a partnership between us and them. So there's at least some catching points, but most people will forget until it's election day. And it's very difficult sometimes to figure out exactly, where they should be. In your situation, they were still in the same poll site, which is not as common as they shouldn't have even been in your poll site because they moved out of Chautauqua into the town of Ellery. Then they should be sent from Chautauqua to Ellery to vote affidavit over there because that's where they currently live. So there's a few variables within the process, but like you had mentioned, if you're going to move, please include the Board of Elections to update your records to make sure we put you in the right spot and give you verifications, just so the situation that you said would be solved. Because if you give us that information in advance, we'll put you into the poll book on whatever site, in whatever location you're at, and they're ready for you. And if they look you up in Ellery, because you moved to Ellery and we're in front of the curb, if you will, then that person will have the opportunity just to do like every other voter, sign in, get their ballot, and go.
Yes, occasionally I run across people who live in Westfield or Lakewood or something, coming into the Mayville poll site. And then we have to send them, at early voting, there's just a few places that you can go to vote, and you're allowed to go to any of them.
That's correct.
And I don't know if that's confused some people or what, but because I have the experience every once in a while of somebody, like I said, from Westfield or Lakewood or something like that, coming into the Mayville poll site to vote. So
that could be a carryover of early voting. That is obviously a totally different way. We only have 4 sites in the county, and anybody from any part of the county, any registered voter, can go to any one of those 4 sites because the system is set up to understand and recognize. And then a ballot is printed directly for you, your ballot. I'm a Stockton voter. I go into any poll site that's early voting, and I tell them who I am, and they find me. They'll push a button, and my Stockton ballot will be on demand produced. I can go vote that, which is totally different. Like when you vote on election day, you guys are only holding Chautauqua 1, 2, 3, and 4 election district.
Right.
If I come in from Stockton, there's no opportunity for you to fulfill my needs because so you have to redirect me, and you have to send me basically to the proper poll site, which is the Stockton Fire Hall. If it's confusing people, we'll have to try to re-educate everybody that, hey, during early voting, you can go wherever you'd like. On election day, you got to go to your poll site. Where your resident is served by that poll site, that's where you're going to have to go.
And it will be on your voter card that you get in the mail.
Correct.
If you wait until the regular election day, go to the one that's listed on your card.
Right.
Yeah.
Always use your card. Your card does have the information, and our website is another option because you can put your name in there. You can find yourself. You could, there's a map. There's all sorts of things of helpful tools. Somebody who's a little confused about, I'm not sure if I'm registered. I'm not sure where I'm registered. There's all sorts of options to help yourself and give yourself a general idea. And even to the core voter who wants to look at the sample ballot prior to going to the poll site. And you can look at it online and kind of evaluate, what is my ballot going to look like when I get there? You could actually upload that and take a look and give yourself an opportunity to go, and you can read over the proposition if there is one. You can look at the candidates, and you can kind of get a head start, if you will. So there is some options on our website for some people, but again, the card is a key component. If you hold that card and really read the card, it can definitely help you.
Oh yeah, definitely. It'll tell you what you can and can't do.
Correct.
So, okay. Now, this leads us to talking about the last 2 years, 2020 and 2021. We have been signing people in electronically. do you want to kind of explain how that works to
Sure.
the viewing audience?
And the reason the e-poll books, electronic poll books, came into being was because of early voting. Because how I described early voting earlier was look at anybody from Ripley to Silver Creek and any place in between could go to any one of our sites. How could that be possible unless you have a device that will recognize all those individuals and create their own ballot? Either that or we'd have to have everybody's ballot available for them for early voting. So what happened was the law changed. They said you can now use electronic poll books to capture these individuals and make them basically have the ballot of their choice for early voting. And then it basically from there was now it can be used for regular election day. Now, electronic poll book in our view is identical to what the paper poll book used to do. Mm-hmm. You're still looking up that individual. You're still verifying their address. You're still taking their signature. You're just doing it on a screen versus in a book where you used to flip it back and forth. Mm-hmm. But you're still looking for that individual and you're still verifying the same information. Mm-hmm. And if it's the same name, it's a Robert Smith, then you're looking for a tiebreaker like a date of birth. Something of that nature to make sure you have the right Robert Smith in front of you.
Right.
So, I mean, the function of the e-poll book, electric poll book, is the same. It's just a matter now where technology is allowing us to do a lot more things. It's allowing us to basically have up-to-the-minute records going on at the Board of Elections where individuals like Chris Burt and Nicole Ellis can be looking at the computer screen and they can see how many people are being checked in. They can see that everything's working. They can know how many people have come and voted and to what point in the day. So there's tracking going on and there's some visual that could help us with tools of knowing how things are going. Mm-hmm. Are they super busy? Maybe we should send some more staff down there. Mm-hmm. Are they really slow? Then I think, basically you're okay. So there's some guidance we can do, some management, some business mm-hmm. decisions, if mm-hmm. you will, as the day is carrying on. Mm-hmm. So the e-poll book came into law or allowable law, and Chautauqua County immediately moved as quickly as possible to make sure that we put them into the field. And at this point, they're an integral part of what we do. And we had a hard time at first maybe convincing people that they were the same function and convincing the workers that once they figured them out, they would like them as much as they do anything else. Mm-hmm. So there was that education and conversion. But we've been very happy. We've been very happy about how they can help us as a board and how they can help identify the voter.
Well, you get the person signed in more quickly, too. With paper poll books, it would take a while sometimes to be going through all of those pages, looking for the person's name. I used to feel kind of stupid sometimes, somehow this makes me look very inefficient.
Oh, it now says for you as a poll worker to ask them the three first letters of their last name, three first letters of their first name, and it will drill down to probably, almost, if not that person, very close to that person who was in your poll book waiting to be processed. So mm-hmm. you've seen the system work. It does mm-hmm. work quickly. Mm-hmm. Then you just ask where do you live, and mm-hmm. that's the final thing, and flip the screen towards them, and they get to write on it, as if they were at the DMV or if they were at Walmart or any place in between, signing electronically. You flip it back and you verify the signature and you hand them the ballot. So it's a system, like I said, that's the same, but it's a little bit scarier because it is electronic.
Oh yeah, yeah, and another thing about it is. If somebody thinks they're going to vote twice,
yeah.
Like
the machine knows.
Yeah, and they go to early voting, and then they come to the poll site. It'll come up. It'll come up on the screen that they've already voted.
Yes. Yeah. So, it will do that process. They communicate. All of the machines communicate with each other, and they will gray you out, as you know, if you try to vote twice. So technology is very efficient when it comes to tracking and communicating and making sure that situations like that are stopped quickly.
Oh yeah, yeah. And let's see here. What can we say to show the public that elections are honest?
Well, we touched on it first when we were talking about the two-party
The
system.
bipartisan teams.
We know that starts the process. That basically is saying to the voter, look, you have two dynamic parties with, obviously two different views or two different whatever's going on as far as they're two parties that are now responsible to come together and provide services by looking out for the system and watching over each other. That starts the process. With that foundation, you can then say, all right, how do we build on that? How do we build on that? Like you just said, the technology is going to catch you. It's there, it's in place. That's one small segment. Once you get the two people watching over each other and signing off on the machines and signing off on the amount of ballots and signing off on the design and signing off on every aspect of the entire process, you have a system in place in New York State that is closed. You have a ballot that you hand out to any individual. That's a hardcore dynamic piece of voting. It is there. If somebody walked in and said, Board of Elections, we don't agree with what happened in Villanova, there's no way everybody voted this way or that way. We can hand count each of those ballots to recreate every election that's out there and verify what the machine has said every time. Now, the system also has methods put in prior to. Before the machines, all of them, go out, they're tested. They're tested by, of course, a bipartisan team. You feed the ballots in, and then you hit the tape and see if the machine actually recognizes exactly what's called a matrix of what is necessary to be 100% accurate before it walks out the door. That happens, and it happens under the guidance eyes of two individuals. They sign off on it. It goes into the field. There's no way into it unless you have a bipartisan team. There is no Wi-Fi ports. There's no way to change the dynamic. There's no way to change the scanner that is going to recognize either you filled in the oval or you didn't. There's no way for any outside source to get into that machine to modify any of the technology. At the end of the process, we also have to randomly pick a certain percentage, which is 3 of the machines that come back, and hand count them just to verify that in those certain areas, the machines are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Again, a bipartisan team sits there for hours going through each ballot to verify. After that process is up, we also have to consider, was the race extremely close? And there's, again, another dynamic of a very close race is a mandatory hand count, which again has to then stand up to the integrity of the election. So you have, from before it goes out the door, the day that you're there in the process, nobody opens the door of the ballots unless there's how many people? 2. And they'll cut the little tiny tag and say that's the security and there's the number on it. And then when they discard that one into the bag and put a new one on, 2 people have to sign off on the exact number as they read it to each other and put it on a form. Again, you see it at the poll site level. It happens at our level prior to, it happens at your level during the day, and it happens after the fact. So there's this check, 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 check going along the process. And what you're seeing and hearing of 2020 or 2021 is a dynamic that somehow or somewhere along the way there's an opportunity for the machine to be exposed to changing ballots. I've heard that one. There's also an opportunity for some of these other things that we have tried to eliminate, or I think have eliminated, which is the process is painstakingly, from this section to A to Z, very, very difficult, if not impossible, to manipulate because of so many checks and balances along the process, where 2 parties, 1 system, and it's checked at the front end and it's checked at the back end, again, using 2 people each time. And again, you're at the poll site, it's a Republican and a Democrat. Back at our warehouse, it's a Republican and a Democrat. At the counting of the ballots, it's a Republican and a Democrat. Always, more than likely, 3 different teams at that point. And then Chris Burt and Nicole Ellis creating the ballot. One a Republican, one a Democrat, creating the software package to print the ballots to provide the services to the voters. So once again, within that system, it still has 2 people watching the integrity of the process and and New York State set it up. New York State was the last state, I do believe, to agree to changing their system. We used to have the lever machine. I'm sure a lot of the viewers would remember going in and liking that machine and thinking it was the best thing since, you know, biscuits and gravy. But the new system allows ADA compliance. It has a backup, which is the ballot that you personally have filled out, and we can recreate any election we'd like to, based on the fact that I still own the ballot, I still have that in my possession, and I can then verify anything you'd like me to because of it.
Yeah. Now it's my understanding too that with the absentee ballots, that a certain amount of people have to request because they're disabled and it's too hard for them to come into the poll site, or like at the worst of the pandemic, a lot of people just didn't want to come out to a lot of public places, so they wanted them. And you hear a lot of rumors being spread around that kind of screws things up, that people are being dishonest or something. But it's my understanding, don't you wait until after Election Day to put those ballots through so that you can check to make sure that none of those people went to the poll site and voted?
We did.
Yes.
But the laws have just changed.
Oh, the law changed?
The law has now changed, and this is going to cause some angst at the poll site, where if you ask for an absentee ballot, you are no longer allowed to vote in person on the machine. Mm-hmm. In the old days, which was last year, you could ask for an absentee and still go to the poll sites. And what would happen is we would take your absentee and set it aside and not count it. Now, if you vote your absentee or even ask for an absentee, you will not be allowed to use the machine at your local poll site.
Oh, is that right?
You'll be asked to vote affidavit.
Oh, okay.
Again, giving us another opportunity to review if there's, you know, what did you do, and to make sure that this is the ballot you want counted.
So you do a lot to prevent people from voting twice.
Yes.
Okay.
And now it's gotten to be even more strict, if you will. If you request that ballot, you won't have the opportunity to use the machine. Now, that's going to be kind of a change for people, because I think that for as long as I can remember, if you asked for it or even if you sent it, you could override it by going there in person. And now that option is gone. So while we have kind of made absentee voting more of a wider dynamic, they've also have stopped the process of having the multiple opportunities to vote, to kind of, I guess, streamline the absentee process and to make sure that if you participate in the absentee process, that is your vote. And they're asking us to actually open them prior to Election Day and then count them prior to Election Day in a fashion that will allow us to give more information on election night. So what will happen is we will count absentees prior to the close of polls on Election Day, and we will also add in, after the close of polls, early voting results to have a bigger presentation of the real reflection of what happened in this election. So you won't get the delay. We used to sit on absentee ballots for 7 days.
Oh, did you?
Yes, and you used to do nothing with them. Now we'll be required to have sessions of opening them and running them through a high-speed scanner in an early voting kind of aspect, if you will, holding those results secretively until we combine all the results on election night. So that's new this year. People do participate in the absentee voting process, and like you mentioned, I can give you some feedback. In 2020, or any presidential year, our worst or best, whichever how you want to put it, results were like 4,000 people would participate. The one year that it became with the pandemic and people not wanting to go to the poll site, and of course all of the issues with, health concerns, we went to roughly issuing out 14,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the dynamic change was people said, whoa, I'm not big on going to my poll site, but I am big on using the United States Postal Service to get my request and my ballot in. So you saw a major shift. The major shift was based on obviously COVID, obviously some modifications in New York State election law to make the process easier. And between those two things, the hurricane hit, which was a major additional amount of absentee ballots to be processed at the local boards. And it kind of took the dynamic of we were a single day poll site state to then we expanded to early voting, and then we expanded to the option for absentee. So you see there's been like a bigger bucket of opportunity for individuals to turn out. And that year they took advantage of the absentee based on what we mentioned.
Now, I wanted to also bring up filling out the ballot after it's been issued to you, and how we do things when somebody makes a mistake. A lot of people probably don't know that if somebody makes a mistake, they can get a second ballot. They can get up to 3, apparently.
That is correct.
We have to, when somebody makes a mistake, we have to have them write the word void on the mistaken ballot. We do not throw those away.
No.
We have a special container
Yes.
that we put them in, and that is, we do have to account for every ballot.
That's what you just said is part of that process.
Yeah.
There's not ballots floating around. There's none that are not accounted for. If I handed you a ballot, I'm responsible to reconcile every transaction of every voter. If you come in, Gail, and you get your ballot and you put it in the machine, then I do know that the machines, the e-poll book said 1, and the machine's saying 1, and the booklet, as far as handing out the ballot is 1, and the process goes from there. If you make a mistake, and again, people make mistakes. We're not, saying that that's not something that happens, because it does. We just want to make people aware of the fact that there is more than one opportunity. You just come on back to the table where you were, and they will put you back into the system and assign you a second ballot. And you're correct. We will have them write the word void and fold it and put it into a special envelope that is sealed and locked. So that is part of the reconciliation as we make sure we account for every ballot along the process. The mistakes are normally made by overvoting. People will eagerly put the oval fill in at the spot of the individual that they really want to win, and then also write their name in at the bottom where it says write in. That is a double vote, and it's too many. If you only get one choice, you can't make 2. So the machine doesn't know that you picked the name of the individual at the top and filled in their oval and picked the name of the same individual at the bottom. All the machine knows is there is writing in that rectangle. And that's too many choices.
Right.
You can only make one choice for whatever that position is, the office is. And the machine's going, well, they wrote in somebody, I don't know who it was, and they also filled in an oval. That means they made 2 choices. That's an overvote. That means that'll void out that race. So nobody's going to get any credit unless you bring it back and fix it.
So the machine will spit it back out at the person.
Yes, and say, you overvoted. You were told at the very top of the ballot you could only make one choice and you made 2. That's a common mistake.
Yeah, another mistake that people make is they'll put check marks in the circles instead of coloring them in.
And then the machine will say,
most people vote correctly. Most people do not make mistakes most years. But every once in a while, you'll get people who forget how to do it. And so they'll just put check marks in, and the machine won't take it because the circles aren't colored in.
Yeah, it has to have 25% of the oval filled in for the machine to recognize it. So as yourself as a poll worker, as myself as the commissioner and all the staff, we need to continually educate individuals that you need to fill in the oval. It's part of the process, and it will always be part of the process to make sure you fill in the oval, because you're right, people will put in X's or check marks or a dot. They just, for some reason, think just a dot is more than enough. Well, we see a lot of different variables of that, but yeah, the educational piece will always have to be there at the poll site when you walk in, at the table where you get checked in, and the verbal coming from the person handing you the ballot. Make sure you fill in the ovals.
And we have special pens to use.
Correct, which is another issue that kind of came up. If you remember a few years back, they were talking about pens and certain pens doing certain things. One of the concerns that you hear from people, and I can understand it, is there's bleed through. Absolutely, that is correct. The markers that we buy, which are basically projected to be the ones that we should use, will bleed through. And painstakingly, as a designer of the ballot, the people who design it have to make sure that, yes, they can bleed through, but it does not reflect or go near any other ovals or any other selections on the back. So when someone sees their ballot, they're like, oh my gosh, it bled through. That means something's going to happen on the back, and there's going to be somebody getting credit for something on the back. We're fully aware that they bleed through, and we're fully aware of the fact that you cannot put the bleed through spot anywhere near any other suggestions.
It's different on the opposite side of the ballot.
That it will be propositions on the back side, a yes or no, if there are any. We have to painstakingly make sure, we meaning the two designers of the ballots, that they don't allow any bleed-throughs to come near any other ovals. It is a system that we've used forever. It's a system that we understand. It's a system that we know we have to make sure that you can't have bleed-through in strategic spots. The machine is looking for marks within certain areas of the ballot, the oval. It's not looking at the rest of your ballot in any way, shape, or form. It wants to identify, did you fill in an oval or did you not? The fact that it bled through, it's not looking at that geographic area on the ballot and asking any questions. It doesn't care. It only looks at the spots where the ovals are. Did you fill them in, did you not? So as individuals start talking about, there's bleed through, there was bleed through on my ballot, there's something wrong, there is nothing wrong. Markers will bleed through paper. But what you have to understand is there's no significance of what they're doing on the backside when there is bleed through, because it's not recognizing and it's not tallying any sort of event that happens through a bleed through. So, and our markers are Sharpies. We buy them, they're very expensive, but they're very efficient and very good at what they do because they dry quick.
The ones we use are the more fine point ones.
So and they dry quickly. And that's the reason we use the ones we use, because I want, and we want, the oval to be filled in, and by the time that person gets to the machine, it's dry. Why do I want it dry? Because I don't want the ink to get caught on the top or the bottom of the Mylar or any sort of connector or any sort of issue where it could create an image that shouldn't be there permanently. So as that is being scanned in, the dry Sharpie is not allowing any sort of residue to go onto what would be considered the scanner part of the machine.
And then people are not allowed to bring white out.
No.
Or anything.
Nothing, no foreign materials at all. A pencil is even bad. If you use long-term pencil, the dust of lead will cause problems with our machines.
Oh, will it?
Yeah.
Will it?
So we have gone to, anything you can talk about. We can talk about the lead of the pencil over the long term of the machine, a pen that basically doesn't dry quickly, or a marker that doesn't dry quickly, or whiteout. All of those things are foreign, and we segregate that away and make you use our pen, because our pen has been tested. It's the best one we can find, and there's nothing wrong with, like I said, the pen or the bleed through. Both of those are part of the process.
And if you make a mistake, you don't have any choice but to go back to the table you signed in at and let them know that you made a mistake.
You made a mistake, and people have to understand people make mistakes.
Right.
Because they get there and there's something that happens, and all of a sudden they realize they did something wrong. That is fine. I mean, that's just part of the day of come on back. We'll be glad to get you a second one and basically get you back in the process.
Right. Okay, now another thing is when there's two sides to the ballot, apparently some people think they'll fill out both sides of the ballot, and we've had the experience of people thinking that they put the ballot through and it's supposed to come back out, so they can flip it over and put it in. Would you explain how the machine works that way?
The machine, if you know your ballot, it has hash marks at the very top, and those hash marks are reading the ballot. It reads both front and back. It does not need to come out and then go back in to be read. it'll understand, especially at a school election, you will always have front and back, because you'll have candidates for the school board, and if you flip it over, it'll be the capital, how much the process will be for running the district or school buses or whatever the yes or no is. So the machine knows, and it's looking for those spots. It knows the front of the ballot, it knows the back of the ballot, it understands that you have selections to make. Now, you can undervote a lot. Say, in our case, there's 4 candidates for Supreme Court, and the person comes in and says, I don't know any one of the 4, or whatever the number turns out to be. They could leave those blank, and you can undervote. That happens also, or you don't have to pick every race going across the board. I mean, you can undervote because you don't know either one of the candidates, or you don't, like either one of the candidates. That option's available, but the machine is only looking for your selections within those ovals, front and back. And it will let you go through the process quickly, unless you've overvoted or something is not filled in enough, like you mentioned earlier. So don't worry. If the poll worker should hand it to you proposition side up, if there is props, because that helps encourage people to understand the ballot has 2 sides.
Well, I know we have to tell people if there's 2. We have to remind them. A lot of them probably know before they come in, but we're supposed to, everybody that comes in, remind them that there's 2 sides to the ballot, but there isn't always, not at every election.
Not at every election. If there's no propositions, you just hand it to them, the candidate side up, and let them do their thing. We like to give it to them prop side up, because we know that they're there more than likely not just for props, but for the candidates. That's probably the number 1 reason they're coming. So if you give them the proposition 1 first and give them the awareness that there is props, it's best to give them that first, and then they can flip it over and then fill in their ovals on the other side.
Okay. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh, yeah. Occasionally you'll have somebody come in, they maybe are right-handed or something, and their hand is broken and they've got a cast on it, and they can't really sign their name, and they'll quite often ask if their spouse can sign for them. We're not allowed to do that.
No. No, you have to sign. It is your signature. Signature verification is the New York State policy. We use that to the best of their ability, and we do have situations where you have to come in and actually, no one else can sign for you. It has to be you. It has to be to the best of your ability, even with some of the things that can happen in your life. And signatures obviously are pretty much, if you look at it closely, even with a broken hand or even with being sloppy, we can identify the fact that that really is you. And so, signature match is how we roll. There are, like you said, some things like that nature, but nobody should and can sign for you. That is your own signature, and that is what holds you through this entire process, as far as, from early in the process when you fill out your registration form all the way to the, process of signing in to get a ballot each year. So you have to make sure you have to make sure that's really you.
Yeah, there was something about this one year that happened, and the woman asked, and I wasn't sure, so I said we'd have to ask the poll site coordinator, and she came over to the table. Normally, people do not have to, in New York State, show their driver's license.
Correct.
But apparently, she had to because, she was, because of the signature problem with her broken hand. And then there was a report that had to be filled out as to why the, signature looked different, and the poll site coordinator had her show her driver's license and so forth. But she must have felt like we thought she was a criminal or something, but it's just,
and let's go back to your yellow card. If you have, I'm saying that can help the process. But in a situation like that one, they are very, very, very rare. We do not have asking for ID at this point. We have the yellow card that is available to speed up the process, and we do everything we can to verify to the best of our ability that's you. But in a general sense, we make sure that you go through the process, and we identify you to the best of our abilities, and we let you get in there and vote. So, obviously there's checks along the way, your registration form. If you fill out your registration form, and I do a lot of high schools and I always mention this, and you don't have the last 4 of your Social Security, or you don't know your driver's license number, don't stop the process. And I tell all the seniors this when we go to local schools. Because what will happen is we'll still register you. And at the very first time you come to vote, there'll be a message in the e-poll book that says ID required.
Oh, okay.
So we will update our records at that point with that individual by them providing us some type of one of those two types of ID. That gets you into the system for the rest of your day. So in a general sense, as we're doing schools, we're doing processes, I always tell the kids, and I always want to make sure people understand, there is an ID at the front end at the voter registration form, the last four of your social or your driver's license that will get you through and get you, into the process. But if you don't have it, continue on and get it to us, and the first time you do come to vote, we'll make sure we do it.
Okay. One of the crew members just handed me a question. What if they want to change their signature? And I'm wondering if that means when there's been a name change.
That is
like
correct.
People, like women, that's not what you meant?
Like if it's changed over time.
He said something about if it's changed over
There's
time.
multiple options and opportunities for people to change the name, and you touched on one quickly, like say if somebody got married. They're no longer Smith, they're now Jones. At the poll site, we'll make them sign both. They'll sign their original, we'll get the match, and then they'll sign their new one, we'll capture the new one, and from that point forward, the next time they come to vote, the new name will be at the very bottom.
Right, right. Well, there was a situation a few years before my mother passed away. She had a stroke, and she was right-handed and couldn't write with her right hand anymore. So she would always print her name when she had to sign her name. Because she didn't seem to be able to do cursive with the left hand. So she would just sort of print her name with the left hand, and it would look a little bit on the messy side. So that's another situation.
The
too.
signature over the course of years will sometimes go in a certain direction and be a little bit different. But in general, there's still a variable within it. We can recognize that individual. If you want to change your name and you want to provide something for us, we'll be glad to update our records to, in your mom's situation or marriage situation or a change of spelling or a mistake that was made originally. All those options are available to update your signature to best match where you are today.
Well, we're running out of time here, but there's a couple more questions I just want to get out to you real quick before we sign off. And we are required to ask people what their name is, even if it's somebody we know. And you want to explain that real quick?
It's because we wanted everybody treated the same way. We don't want somebody getting into the process with, the person behind you is somebody you don't know. And they're like, wait a minute, you let that person come in without saying anything, but I have to give you my name. So if we treat every voter identically, we won't have an issue with me behind you wondering why you weren't quizzed, but I was. So if we uniformly treat all voters the same way, we found it most effective to say to everybody, treat everybody the same way, even if it's your spouse or whatever, because that way has the line and the individuals and the process is all a standard procedure to get people in and out. You'll get a person who's going like, why was I treated differently in their mind and maybe even vocally before they leave if you don't do it that way. So we try to standardize all procedures at the poll site, at the Board of Elections, during training, anything humanly possible to make sure we always do it the exact way for every circumstance. That's why we do it that way.
Now, the last question is kind of a fun one. At the training, when we take the training, we are told to be professionally dressed. And when we're working at the poll site, I remember the first year I wore a skirt and a nice sweater, and then a lot of the other people were coming in their jeans and like that, to work. So could you explain to the viewing audience exactly what is meant by, what do they actually mean by professionally dressed?
Well, like anything professional, I guess in certain mindset of to what degree. A poll site is a place where we feel that everybody should have a great opportunity to vote. The procedures should all be the same, like we mentioned. But the individuals that are there, the individuals like yourself, we need you to be professional across the board in how you handle customers, what you say during the day, how you handle all the issues and topics. You're doing democracy. You're doing your civic duty. You're doing things for the process of what really separates this country from maybe some others as far as how we handle this. We don't want anything other than what we call a solid or really good voting experience. I think that includes individuals that come dressed appropriately, prepared to work, prepared to basically do everything above board and professionally all day, from the way they talk, the subjects they will talk about, to the way they carry themselves, and to handling people as customers. The voter's a customer. In our vision, the voter is there as a customer, and we need to provide that customer with the greatest service we possibly can. Part of that process is the appearance. Part of that process is the entire package of you and all the other hundreds and hundreds of poll workers who come out and help us. We're trying to make sure that everybody understands that this is an important job you're doing, and how you carry yourself will help us make sure we provide these services to the best of our ability. Professional, means different. Does it mean shirt and tie and jacket? It absolutely does not. But it does mean that your appearance is extremely important as part of the process to make sure that everybody feels comfortable.
Neat and clean, basically.
Well, again, we try to do the best we can to make sure that we provide services that the customer's okay with everything that's going on in each of the poll sites. And we have 49 of them, and there's a lot of individuals and there's a lot of moving parts, and we just want to make sure, like I said, that everybody wants to vote, turns out to vote. There's certain years, like we discussed before the camera started to turn, that 33% of the individuals that could have voted last year turned out. That means 67% stayed home. That is depressing, and we'll do everything we can to make sure you get the best parking spots, the most convenient place to come in, the most convenient process to go in, go out. I always tell people, give me 7 minutes of your day and you will be part of democracy. Not standing in line, hopefully, for hours and hours like other places or other situations. So our goal is to make sure that's a good voting experience, but only 33% participated last year, and maybe this year will be 50. Still not enough. We need more participation, and that starts and ends with a poll worker being part of the process to make sure that we get people to come on out.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It really means a lot to me that you came in to explain all of this stuff to the viewing audience. So I think a lot of people don't know how much there is,
behind the scenes.
Yeah, really. And so I just wanted everybody who watches Fresh Perspectives to know why we do what we do, and everything that they really should know but probably don't.
We give them the keys to democracy. They just have to drive up to our place and participate.
Right.
And I always, again, we say to the kids, look at, just give us 7 minutes in November, and if you have the opportunity, give us those 7 minutes in June, and we're there. And you're there, and we're all working behind the scenes to make it happen and come together. So we certainly want more participation, and we certainly want to make sure that if anybody has any questions, the Board of Elections in Mayville, we're open every weekday, 8:30 to 4:30. We have that website, which is extremely informational, votechautauqua.com. If you have any interest or any sort of situations where you feel you're not quite understanding, or you call us, and we'll be glad to take you through the process and talk to you. As a person who's a voter, who's got a concern, got a question, whatever, we're more than glad to help out. The voters, the candidates, residents, anybody who feels that they don't have the right information, or they're have a question about what they think that they know, or something that they've been told, we'll be glad to confirm it. So,
okay.
All right.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I finally had the chance to meet you. And I'll see those of you in the viewing audience on the next episode.
Thank you.
Sure.